couples who talk about sex and couples who schedule sex tend to have more and better sex. And scheduling, some people feel like, oh, it should be spontaneous. It should, it has to have the passion and the this and the that, which is again the lights and the clamor of Hollywood and pornography that said that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I'm gonna pencil you in on Wednesday at 8. It's gonna be oh, my mom's coming to get the kids later. Did you have plans? No? You want some?
Hello, lovers and learners. Welcome to my channel. My name is Beverley and I'm a couples therapist. And today I am joined by the lovely Brittany Smith, who is a licensed social worker and Christian sexologist and the host of the Daring Discussions podcast. I am such a fan of her. And one thing that I love that she has said before is that she stands in the gap between science and scripture of sex to empower people to see themselves as sexual beings. And I think so often, or more often than not, we think about sex as just the act as opposed to identity. So today we're going to be talking about how we're going to build confidence through experimentation and all the things that kind of goes into it. So Brittany, I would love for you just to tell my audience just a little bit about the work that you do, because I know and I think you're so amazing at what it is that you do. But just tell just a little bit about how you got into it, what drew you to this work, and then we'll keep it moving.
Yeah. So, not to be cheesy, but the Lord drew me to this work because I wanted to
Oh
be a
yeah,
lawyer.
there's nothing cheesy about the Lord.
Yeah, I wanted to be a lawyer. I was going to be, Joan Carroll Clayton, Maxine Shaw, Brittany Smith. That's what it was going to be.
Okay.
But I went to college and it was a series of events from changing my major from poli sci to psychology, then master's in social work. And then at the end of that program, when we were doing our couples unit, my professor was like, if you work with couples, you're going to be paid, but you're going to be wore out. I was like, I'm wore out
Mm,
already. And so, might as well get paid while I'm doing it. But then, I began to think like, to find my niche, I was like, there's nobody doing this work specifically as it relates to Christians, and couples work is good, but couples sex therapy would be specific, would be more, would pull me away from the fray, is what I was thinking. And then so I went to my master's program at Widener University here in Pennsylvania, and I got a second master's in human sexuality. But it was the way the program was structured. We met 2 weekends a semester, and my pastor at the time was like, if you're going to be leaving out the house, you need to be bringing something back into the house. And so he had me teach a Sunday school, a joint single to married Sunday school, which was called Sex and Salvation. And I was really struggling. I was like, Lord, how in the world am I supposed to have this conversation about sex in church with this mixed audience? What am I going to say that doesn't wake love before it's time for the single people, but don't bore the married people to tears? Like I couldn't figure it out. So, I did like very light, like love languages stuff, essentially God's heart for sex, intimacy, and relationships. With that workshop going, I mean, that Sunday school went on to be my signature workshop, If God Created My Clitoris. But after that workshop was done, one of my favorite elders came up to me and he said, baby girl, this was good. I knew it would be good. But next time, can we do it in the fellowship hall? I don't know about all of this in the sanctuary. And if ever I heard the audible voice of God, it was that day in that moment. And he said, this is it, and this is why. So while I do work with couples, I do work individually with women and men who are like trying to discover God's heart for sex and intimacy, trying to, embrace sexual authenticity and sexual confidence in the wake of purity culture and, sexually conservative religions. I do that work one-on-one. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, those type of things. This work that I do in public on social media and with the podcast, when I work with churches speaking, this is my go ye therefore. This is my cry loud and spare not. These are my tracks, if you will, where the Lord said, I want you to show my people who I am and how much I love them, but through the medium of sex education. So when you said earlier that I bridged the gap between the science and scripture, um, that's not even to suggest that there is a gap that exists as much as it's a gap in knowledge, because science was created to explain creation. Science bends to the word. And I'm just here. God is using me as a conduit to show people that even the sexual pieces, the pieces that we sniggle and giggle about, all still bows to him, because there's nothing concerning us that he isn't concerned about, and nothing concerning us that he doesn't have a word about. And so that's what I do.
Y'all, this is why she's here. Like, she's here. That was a word in itself. Like,
Amen.
man, I, like a big part of this topic for me, like I started thinking about just comfort, how comfort can be that source of stability for a lot of couples, but it can also be the thing that holds a lot of people back from experiencing fulfillment just in life, right? So like
Yeah.
even outside of just sexual practice, the idea of comfort in doing things that we know,
Yeah.
like we were all beginners at one point in time with just multiple aspects of our life. But sometimes when we think about our relationships and trying something new, whether it's how we communicate with each other, whether it's anything that is a part of sexual intimacy, changing the structure of your marriage, even if it doesn't subscribe to what your church folk may say, or how they think marriage should be done. I just think that there's that internal resistance to try something new. And
Yeah.
so let's say you had a couple that like just come to you, or just past experiences that you've had with couples who, you notice that they're kind of stuck in routines versus the ones who are trying something new. Like, what do you notice about the two different groups, about their relationship?
There is a confidence and a courage that the people who are willing to try new things have, but trying new things not from a place of searching, not from a place of like trying to fill a void, but in a confidence that there are these freedoms that we get to explore. So from more of an exploration standpoint, like in a courageous discovery standpoint, that realizes we're confident in what we have, what we're doing works well, but I want to see what else we can do in addition to, not to fix, you know what I'm saying? Like we use a language of like, spicing things up or getting the spice back and all of that. And it's like fixing language, like this reparative language. And I think exploration, the beauty of it, exploration is when it's done on an already solid foundation. And the ones who are like, this is what we do, nothing to the left or the right, missionary on Tuesday and Wednesday, special attention, a little on the birthday. That's it. We don't go no further. I think that there's sometimes
Yeah.
a fear. There's sometimes a
Yeah.
fear there of either inadequacy, that if we try something new, I'm not going to be good at it. If I suggest something new, folks are going to judge. Or folks are going to judge me. Dr. Candace Hargens has a book out called Good Sex that is amazing, where she talks about those hindrances to exploration is and those like fear of self, of inadequacy, fear of the partner's like viewpoint, or like like whether it will be a hit to your reputation in some way, and they also fear of whether the relationship is secure enough to withstand whatever type of exploration that you're looking for. And some might say, like, why wouldn't a relationship not be able to stand on, trying something new? Because if a relationship is built on routine and the structures of the relationship is held up with, we only do this on Tuesday, we only do this on Thursday, and there's no room for change and grow, no space and grace for differences, then something new could shake the foundation. And so that's why I like the idea of exploration from a solid base, where we're doing things that just puts more, just puts more on what we already are enjoying. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Like, you make sense because you were so confident in what you just said. Like, I mean,
Well, that
it
don't mean
is
that,
true.
because
Like,
it's
that
a lot of confident people that don't know what they be talking about. They be loud and wrong. That's not what we talk about. But
we're not naming it. We're not calling nobody out,
and
but
I wasn't saying it. It was like, Brittany, you said it, but you were thinking it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, go ahead. Let's go. Let's go.
caught it. Just caught it. Okay, okay. So,
Blessed assurance.
shenanigans. Jesus. That piece that you said, like that space and grace, like not as like a test, like we're testing the foundation, but more so like we are secure in who we are
Yes.
as individuals and as a unit. And so we're able to move with curiosity to kind of push our boundaries, like push them back and see how far they can go, because that gives you the opportunity to learn. And I think that's sometimes, that's when that comfort in the relationship really starts working against the couple, when they aren't really proactive about learning each other or
Yes.
learning themselves and then learning each other, because you don't know what you like until you try something new. And I do think that this is reinforced when you have that mindset in every other aspect of your life, like trying new cuisine, trying a different store, or let's watch this movie that we're not used to. I think that that's that practice that enables,
Yes.
trying something new, experimenting in the bedroom.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I speak a lot with couples and even individuals about transferable skills or transferable experiences. And my mom used to say, wherever you go, there you are. And so there are pieces of us in the way we show up outside of the bedroom that's going to inevitably make its way, into to the bedroom. And you can start
Wow.
the explorative processes outside of the bedroom first. Like try a new um nail polish color. A friend of mine like was on threads and like having this big like conversation and a real like experience for women where like she was ready to change her nail shape. She did coffin French manicure almond shape for the last 15 years and she was like, I think I want to try something new. And it was just like, but what does that mean for me? And this is all I ever known. And it was like a whole like group experience. And for some people it's not that deep, but it really is. Like we get like you speak about comfort, we can get comfortable and having a sense of comfort is a good thing. But then when comfort becomes a crutch, it's another thing. But then when comfort becomes a prison, it's altogether different. And I think that there are ways in which we can eat, especially for people from conservative religions, where exploration, spice, trying new things are oftentimes used as euphemisms for let me dabble in, some sin or some kink or something, a little bit, which doesn't have to, it could be not the sin piece, but the kink piece, dabble in the kink a little bit. We could do it, but it doesn't have to be that. But we're so afraid of of messing up and missing the mark. And wanting to do right, wanting to maintain your values is not a bad thing. But the way in which we use fear to keep people in line is what's hindering what's happening or creating this environment that's happening in the bedroom. So allowing comfort to be the secure base from which you launch as opposed to something that tethers you to what used to be, that's where we really get to enjoy those freedoms as individuals and as couples.
I'm really curious about what you said around like that fear being used to keep people in line. I'm thinking about how that kind of feels like for me like a projection. It's just like
Mm.
if fear is present, right? If you're experiencing it or
Yep.
I'm experiencing it, but I'm like, we have to stay within these bounds. Like, what do you feel like that fear is really telling that person? Because fear is information, right? It's an
Yep.
emotion, it's information. There's so much backstory that can be associated with that, right? How do you think that that fear being used in that way, I mean, could it be used in a different way? Could they respond differently to it? Like,
They could, and everybody does respond to fear differently, but I think that it's difficult. We oftentimes don't name fear as fear. And I think that's the important part of investigating. Like you said something earlier about boundaries. I think it's important to investigate boundaries to see what is there. Are there like is there guard? Is it a guardrail or is it a barbed wire fence? This particular boundary. And I think fear, like if we talking about sex, and from my vantage point as a Christian sexologist, sex has commonly been taught from the fear based lens. Like you don't want to sin. For women, if you have sex, before marriage, you're going to be no good. All the purity culture teaching of the chewed up gum and, if in black culture you fast and you are Jezebel and all those things. So I am afraid of being seen as the thing which was deemed negative or bad or evil or worthless. So then I get into my marriage and I want to stay this line and walk this course because even if my mind or even my body is like, this over here might be a little interesting. I'm afraid that tapping into this, exploring this, or even if I don't try it, right? Admitting out loud that it's even something of interest, right? Because that's freedom too. You don't have, because freedom, again, particularly from the Christian lens, is not getting to a place of comfort where you try and do everything, where anything goes, any way the wind blows. That's not freedom. Freedom is the opportunity to examine likes, dislikes, interests, and decide, okay, this is something of interest. I explored it. Nah, I don't like it. I tried it. I don't need to do it again. Or that's good for those people over there. Pineapples for me. And that's also okay. That's the sex positivity lens. But fear says, I have to do it only this way. I'm carrying the weight of potential failure. And if I do it, it's going to change the way he looks at me, change the way she thinks of me. Or it's the, again, the question of the foundation of the relationship of like, oh, if we try, like, let's just say, for example, I had a couple, the husband had issues with porn, like compulsive obsessive compulsive porn watching. He laid it, he did it all through his life, and introduced to it really early as a child. They were very open about it in their courtship time, but there were certain things that he wanted or was asking of her in their marriage that she associated with pornography. She had never seen pornography, but she just assumed that what he was asking for was porn. When we got into it, he wanted her to crawl on the bed and, do some winking and all of this, like sensual. Like he wanted what he actually wanted. And I often feel like men want one thing but ask for another. Like a lot of times what they ask for, like what they want and what they want to happen, don't necessarily coincide. And so he wasn't really communicating it well. But what he wanted was confidence that she wanted to be there, that she wanted it as much as he did. And so he wanted her to be a little more involved in the experience. But she assumed, or she dismissed his request as, oh, that's from porn. When in reality, she used to honor how classy she was and how much of a lady she was and all of those things. And her doing in her head, if she complied with those requests, she wouldn't be his beautiful, demure, classy lady anymore. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question as an example?
Absolutely. Like there's, degrees of acceptance when it
Yes.
comes to, is this something that I want? Is this something that I want to entertain? Right. So there's that degree because you don't just jump from I think and I do. There's
Correct.
that spectrum of acceptance. And also, there's so much meaning, like you said, tied behind these desires that, do we give life to these desires or do we blow out that flame very quickly because it's looked on as oh, that's different or
Yeah.
that's bad or like there's all these judgments versus let's become curious about the desires. Okay, I don't know how to communicate that I want to, or no, let me take a step back based off of your example, him not being able to communicate that I feel unsure about whether or not my partner desires me in this moment right now. And it requires a level of vulnerability for me to say that I am unsure, especially if I'm supposed to be the man and I'm supposed to know and I'm supposed to lead her, right?
Yep.
As opposed to recognizing that intimacy is a partnership, desire is a partnership, and being able to communicate that. So I wonder, me, therapist brain, I'm just thinking, I wonder if is it he wasn't able to language what it is that he wanted, or did he really have a lot of difficulty being vulnerable around saying that I don't know if you really want me as much as I want you. However, I have this idea in my mind or this appearance. If you show up in this way, then I know. But that's not a guarantee because someone can just perform that. So goes, oh, my
Yeah.
partner wants that, but that doesn't mean that that's what they want.
Yeah.
And so even with that, right, just thinking about how experimentation is vulnerability
Yeah.
practice, like what's the connection between trying new things and being vulnerable?
It's a direct connection into the word, and I like the word that the language that you use when you said vulnerability in practice, because I think that we are all vulnerable at a point. Like you don't have to do anything to be vulnerable. The practice, the effort is when sharing that with others or letting others into that vulnerable space. And so experimentation, especially if it's something in an area that is novel for the unit or even novel for you individually, that takes a level of vulnerability, which is the linchpin of intimacy, to be able to say, okay, I'm going to offer this, I'm going to request this, I'm going to try this, and I need to be seen, heard, and valued and understood throughout it, whether it goes really well or whether it goes really good. And if I try this thing and he loved it, I know how he gets about stuff that he loves. He gonna ask me to do this every single day. I just don't have time to be doing, I don't have time for 3-piece lingerie sets every single day. You gonna get this moo 5 days a week. Or it's like, if I know she wants me to try to pick her up, but I got a bad back and I love how thick she is, but I just don't know if I can hold her up. And what happens if I drop her? And these are all the things that we are telling ourselves to be able to fight through all of those things. Um, it takes vulnerability and experimentation. That's that vulnerable piece, and being vulnerable, as you said, in practice is the start of it. But I think also it would be easier if we, as you said earlier, look at it as the spectrum, right? Like, we have the desire, that the exploration of the desire, meaning we're talking about it, we're laying out the potential concerns, we're doing the research, we're watching videos together, sharing YouTubes or memes or gifs or whatever. That is a success too. That's part of the experiment, right? Like, there are so many, and we look at science,
Right.
there's so many stages of the experimentation process. And give yourself kudos for, I said that, I sent the text message. I said, hey, what do you think about trying a new toy? That, right, the toy hadn't even been bought. But the fact that you sent that text message, you're on your way. You're on your way. And then when they respond, oh,
Yeah.
what were you thinking? You pick up you look at a couple options, you send me a sample links, and then, over dinner we'll talk about it. Now we're even further on our way. You get to the store or on the website, you may not buy anything for 2 weeks, but we're working in the same direction. And even if at the end of the day y'all say, you know what, I don't think that this is for us, that still was part of the experimentation. That still opened up your relationship to and unlocked a new level of vulnerability, and thus a new level of trust, a new level of safety, and even a new level of affirmation, because y'all were at a precipice of introducing something different. And through the experience, you realize, oh, we're actually solid where we are, which then gives a newfound appreciation for what you already have, a newfound appreciation for the partners, because it's like, oh, you really do see me. I really am doing well. That, I tried that tongue move and you didn't say nothing the first 2 times, but you did like that. Oh, bless the Lord.
Listen, I mean, once again, it's that spectrum of like,
Yep.
we are desensitizing ourselves to the conversation, to the topic. Couples aren't talking about sex enough. They're not talking about sexual intimacy.
Yes.
They're not talking about desires enough, because a lot of times they don't have the language. They don't have the
Yep.
language. No one, not saying this is for everybody, right? But for most couples that I have been confronted with, they didn't have anyone talking to them around, this is how you should talk about sex with your partner
Right.
and your desires. It's just like, okay, like eventually y'all get together. Maybe you've seen porn before, or maybe you talked to your girlfriends, or maybe your mom says something just randomly. But the practice of being comfortable enough, right? That is something that becomes, a matter of self and relational discovery, trying to figure
Yep.
out what does work for us when we're trying to, you know, start our intimate journey together, and figuring out like what it is for us to mess up, quote unquote, or if we try something and the outcome wasn't what we expected, how do we give each other feedback? Like,
Yep.
giving feedback right after, is that a no? Are you open to it? Or can we proactively talk about it another time? Like, all of these kind of, translates to vulnerability and building that safety, and knowing that, okay, like, you are open, like, this is like a judge free environment. Like, it's okay for us to be beginners and to look like beginners and to
Yes.
navigate awkwardness. Cause I think
Yes.
too, like the feeling of, oh my gosh, like I didn't satisfy my partner. It's gonna go well, or this is awkward. What are we gonna do? And it's just like, it's okay. Like, it
Yes.
happens.
Yep.
How does a couple normalize that?
Look at the other areas in your life, in your relationship, where you try and fail, where you fail and laugh, where you fail last and recalibrate. Approach it from that same vantage point. Unfortunately, people just in general hold sex on this like pedestal as part of this like novel aspect of a relationship, when if it becomes to gets to a place where it's talked about regularly and it's integrated into every other priority into the relationship and given as much attention, just like you do the bills, just like you decide whose house you're going to this year for Thanksgiving, just how you navigate whether one partner's going to stay home or you know what I'm saying? Like all of those things, sex should be talked about and brought to the relationship boardroom in the same way. That takes the sting out of it. It takes the pressure off of it. It removes the finish line. Like all of those things that promote performance anxiety, promote pressure. If we move to the place where having like little everyday check-ins about the experiences, the desires, the interests, that's how we get there, because you talked about like messing up and porn in Hollywood, even if you've never watched porn. And really, there's a lot of porn that we are getting inundated with on social media that people don't even take their clothes off yet. There's a lot of like relationship life porn, which is essentially a a curated fantasy. But they don't even have to be hunching. You see your favorite influencer with their perfectly curated backdrop and their kids matching, and brands are just sending them millions of thousands of dollars worth of product, and you consume it all, and you think that there's
Mm,
going to be a life with that, with no input from you, no mistakes and all those things. Porn is the same way. Porn doesn't show people falling off the bed. Porn doesn't show often you going to get the lube because you done got dry from the ceiling fan. Porn tells you that you want it, you get it, and you look good while you're doing it. Porn doesn't show with the
yeah.
bonnet and the moo lift up to the side. I'm turning over like, love you, boo. Boom, boom, boom. Porn doesn't often show the quickies and all of those things. And so if we are consistently measuring ourselves up against all manner of things, and comparison, we felt like that quote, comparison is the thief of joy, and comparison is also the thief of
Yeah.
pleasure and also the thief of orgasms. And I think that it is
Right.
one of those things that we all struggle with in one way or another, and
Yeah.
slowly but surely it creeps into our our bedroom in the ways in which we disregard as well as idolize sex and relationships.
Yeah. Yes, everything she just said. I mean, the thief of fulfillment, right? The thief of fulfillment, the thief of imagination, the thief of creativity. Like
Yep.
like comparison robbed so many couples of
Yep.
being able to try different things. And I think just like with our conversation, I'm really understanding like when it comes to experimentation, really at the core is being able to let your interactions with each other be low stakes. Like if
Yes.
you build this
Yes.
practice of experimenting and trying different things in your life, then of course it will trickle down into your intimacy. It'll trickle
Yep.
down into the sexual satisfaction that you ultimately
Yep.
want to have. And the vehicle for that is vulnerability. It's flexibility. I mean, flexible
Yep.
in all the ways, but
Okay.
flexibility in you're not going by a script.
Correct. Correct.
You're not
And
going
I
by
think
a script.
and
Right?
and
Yeah.
even the pressure with that comparison does is like we are acting like we go 0 to 60 too fast, because experimentation
Mhm.
could also just be, we normally have sex at nighttime. What would happen if we had sex in the middle of the day? Like, especially if nighttime you keep missing each other, somebody's tired, the kids keep waking up for whatever reason, y'all both work at home, the kids are in school, y'all have time from 1 to 3, have sex in the middle of the afternoon. That is also
And the
experimentation. It doesn't have to go
oh,
from missionary to flogging and handcuffs. Like there's so much more in the middle. In the same way with like scheduling sex, like folks, like I found couples who talk about sex and couples who schedule sex have more and better tend to have more and better sex. And scheduling, some people feel like, oh, it should be spontaneous, it should, it has to have the passion and the this and the that, which is again the lights and the clamor of Hollywood and rose and pornography that said that But it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I'm gonna pencil you in on Wednesday at 8. It's gonna be oh, my mom's coming to get the kids later. Did you have plans? No? You want some? It could be something like that. And then
Come
we
get
already
some.
know what's coming. And then what that does is build
Yeah.
anticipation. That gives you something to look forward to. That shows your
Yeah.
partner that they're important because they see you then moving around and addressing the competing priorities that typically hinder the time that y'all want to have together. Like if you got, if you have a wacky Wednesday, or a naughty Friday on the in the calendar every day. Like if when Google tells me it's 30 minutes to naughty to naked Friday, you don't think that I'm going to be jumping for joy? It's like it's an excitement that
Come on.
can be there, if not more
Yeah.
than the spontaneous. Oh, we're kissing coming into the house and the clothes just magically fall off the floor. We're 40. I cannot fall onto the floor because if I fall on this floor coming in this door, I'm going to hurt.
You're not
I
getting up.
actually need to stretch. Okay. Let me know. Give me 72 hours. Oh, baby, I'm
Come on. Warm
okay.
you up. And you know what? It's funny that you say that because I've had couples that I told them to integrate both approaches. Like, yes, you can leave room for spontaneity
Correct.
and you can schedule intimacy and it can still be exciting. I'm like, especially if there's certain things that you want to try and experiment.
Eh,
I'm like, if you even want to toggle it by like this one person can set the scene. Like if you want to schedule so like, okay, twice a month, we know that these are our days. Each of you guys take a day and set the scene and still have your spontaneous time together. Like there's room for both.
Absolutely.
The difference is there's a level of intentionality, knowing that hey, we're not allowing life to come in the way so that we went this whole month and there was nothing
Yep.
versus well, we know that we have two times that we are going to commit and spend time with each other and enjoy each other and anything else is just wonderful. It's a holistic approach to sexual
Yes.
intimacy.
That is so perfect. You in the spirit because I talk to my couples all the time about creating a sex captain for the week, and each week is a different captain, and so the other person doesn't know what that other party has planned, so the spontaneity is still baked in, and again with the anticipation. And the other piece of experimentation is that if the actual when things are great and all of the cars align and you all knock it out the park and it's wonderful and you may not necessarily want to add or need to add anything there. Experimentation could also look like, what does sex look like for us? What does pleasure look like for us when we are limited? What does pleasure look like for us when we got to run in the bathroom real quick? We can be experimenting on how flexible I am in the back seat of this car. How many rounds can we get in between these naps? You know what I'm saying? How often what can we do without getting arrested, in between your meetings? Like, though that can be experimentation. And it doesn't have to be,
Bailing nobody out of jail.
yeah, because we don't want to do that. Like, let's not go too far. Like, we don't want any indecent exposure because you're in the parking lot, mooning the cops. Like, let's not do that. But also,
Right.
if we remove this idea of this like formulaic foreplay, penetration for X amount of time, orgasm, everybody falls asleep, or orgasm, refractory period, we try again, like whatever your routine is, if we break free from even that, for some people, that bondage. And I say, even, and this is, they ain't gonna like this kind of church, but if we take the orgasm off the table and we just focus on pleasure, like, you came in, you hugged me, I
That
had a bad day, and you just rub on my nipples for 5 minutes, and then I go back downstairs and chop up these, clean these greens.
listen, I will forever die on this hill that creativity is impeded when it comes to sexual intimacy because you're so focused on penetrative sex as
Yep.
opposed to developing pleasure and eroticism and
Yep.
desire and
Sensuality.
arousal
Yep.
in your relationship.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
And even
all of
that
it.
build, especially with life the way it is, we are busy. Folks have jobs, folks have dreams that they're creating, folks are serving in ministry, folks have family, kids are haters. God loves them, we know, but they are haters and they don't,
It's no
they don't and so we give yourself, like, if you are holding out for this perfect, whatever order of operations, you are hindering yourself from excitement. And then those little moments where we make it our business to, to find some type of pleasurable moment, pleasurable touch, holding each other, getting freaky in the text messages, whatever it is, some touch point throughout every day that builds the anticipation, that reminds you, like, okay, we may not be able to time wise, logistically come together, literally and figuratively at this time, but I still want you. And baby, when it's time, oh, we're going to explode. And it builds that anticipation. I recommend that for people who live together, for folks who have partners who are out of the house a lot, like when they do long trucking, they're deployed somewhere, working overnight, like all of those type of things, just little touch points throughout the day that says, and speaking of experimentation, I'm going to figure out different ways to shock you, to like break up the monotony of life, not just monotony of our relationship, the monotony of life. When you love somebody and y'all know each other well, y'all routine can become monotonous. Like, and then the dangers of like this like shared universal understanding of like, I know what you think, I know how you flow, I know where you're going to be. Sometimes we can take our partners for granted that they may not want anything new, that they don't need anything novel. Like once we've decided, oh, I know them, experimentation also requires, or comfort in experimentation also requires maintaining a posture of the student. Always be willing to learn, always be curious, not just of what can happen, not just of the outcome, but be curious of your partner. I say all the time the equation: empathy leads to intimacy, which leads to ecstasy. And empathy is seeing your partner as human, and intimacy is engaging with that person and all that human needs. And then the ecstasy is the pleasure that comes from the foundation built from the first two.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I mean, what else is there to say? Like, say that equation again, because I need people to, because they may not want. I need you to say it again, because that was.
Yes, empathy leads to intimacy, which leads to ecstasy.
This was free.
Okay.
I hope y'all took notes. I hope you guys rewind. This was I mean, if this wasn't a workshop, a free workshop.
Okay.
Brittany, thank you so much for accepting my invite. I want them to hear from professionals who are in the game, who are working with couples, who are doing the research, who are credentialed. Thank you so much. Please, you guys, if you have any questions, drop them down in the comments. I will send them to Brittany. Like, girl, we may have to run this back again because the folks have questions. Anytime. But please like and subscribe my channel, like and subscribe her channel, because she got the content there. If you want more of it, please find her on Instagram, all the things. Can you tell the people where to find you, first of all?
Yes.
Tell them.
Instagram, I am at Christian Sexologist Brittany. On YouTube is the Christian Sexologist or Daring Discussions podcast, as you said earlier, or www.theintimacyfirm.
Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you for watching this entire video. I appreciate it. And once again, as I always say, love intentionally and have a good rest of your day.